Traditional economic models operate on a rigid assumption. Financial well-being is a strictly linear function of your objective household income. These models, built almost entirely on data from Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies, often referred to as weird societies, assume that as a population's bank accounts grow, their financial anxiety shrinks. But the data tells a conflicting story. As global wealth climbs, financial anxiety remains paradoxically high. The structural models predicting economic behavior are breaking down under the pressure of actual human experience. To map what actually drives financial security, researchers initiated the Global Flourishing Study. This project analyzed the economic and psychological realities of 202,898 participants across 22 culturally and economically diverse nations. Capturing a genuinely representative global sample required leveraging the massive international data collection infrastructure of Gallup Incorporated, utilizing their legacy of rigorous survey methodology. The resulting dataset proves that accurately modeling human financial reality requires abandoning simplistic income metrics and embracing a globally representative, multidimensional approach. This animated matrix maps out that new multidimensional framework. By explicitly separating objective resource limitations on the x-axis from subjective psychological states on the y-axis, we can decouple actual wealth from the feeling of security. The first half of this matrix tracks the objective metrics: household income, which measures literal cash flow, and material security, which measures the frequency of worry over basic physical needs like safety, food, and housing. The remaining quadrants capture the subjective metrics: financial security, or the lack of worry about meeting normal living expenses, and subjective financial well-being, which assesses how comfortably a person feels they are living on their current income. When we plot the global data onto this framework, extreme disparities emerge. Sweden charts highly with a mean financial security score of 7.23 out of 10 and a very low Gini coefficient of 0.21. The Gini coefficient is a statistical measure representing income inequality within a nation, where 0 equals perfect equality. In sharp contrast, Argentina plots much lower, with a financial security score of 3.95 and high levels of inequality. True financial well-being is defined by the intersection of physical resource limitations and psychological fragility. To reverse engineer financial vulnerability, researchers started with the proximate layer of data. This graph illustrates the standard economic life cycle model, which predicts a U-shaped distribution of financial security. As the line plots the pooled estimate points across age groups, security dips during middle age and rises significantly in late adulthood. The theoretical drivers behind this curve are well documented. Older populations generally have reduced financial liabilities, access to social safety nets, and decades of accumulated money management skills. However, overlaying the specific national data reveals deep cross-national heterogeneity. For countries like Tanzania, Poland, and Japan, the U-curve breaks down into inverse or completely flat distributions, proving it is not a universal law. Japan presents a particularly stark demographic anomaly. Widowed individuals in the Japanese dataset paradoxically report the highest levels of subjective financial security, despite having the lowest objective household income. Demographic life cycle models fail on a global scale because they treat localized cultural symptoms as universal mathematical constants. Another highly proximate demographic predictor of material security and subjective financial well-being is marital status. Married individuals consistently report higher security due to the economic mechanisms of the marital dividend. This includes the buffering effect of pooled financial resources and the division of household tasks, which actively reduces daily cognitive and mental load. Conversely, the data shows severe vulnerability spikes associated with relationship dissolution. Separated and widowed populations globally experience drastic drops in reported material security. While structural partnerships act as a critical buffer against material insecurity, they are a surface-level defense. They mask deeper, pre-existing developmental variables that shape how individuals handle financial stress. Beneath these adult proximate causes lies the study's root layer, non-financial childhood psychosocial predictors. This layered network graph visualizes the meta-analytic regression model used by the researchers. It connects non-economic conditions experienced at age 12, the bottom layer, directly to adult financial outcomes at the top. The data shows a compounding impact from physical health. Reporting excellent health during childhood yields a risk ratio of 1.18 for reaching the highest adult income quintile. A risk ratio is a statistical measure comparing the probability of an outcome occurring in an exposed group versus an unexposed group. Contrast that with childhood religious attendance. While frequent attendance strongly predicts adult subjective security, it completely fails to predict objective household income across the global sample, returning a statistically insignificant p-value of 0.238. Economists Flavio Cunha and Jen Checkman established that early childhood development is instrumental in forming cognitive and non-cognitive skills, which heavily influence long-term human capital. An adult's economic reality is largely a delayed structural manifestation of their childhood psychosocial stability. The study also isolates the exact quantitative impact of severe childhood psychosocial adversity across the 4 adult financial metrics. Looking at this node for childhood physical or emotional abuse, the data reveals a massive negative 0.38 effect size drop in adult material security. Social alienation carries a similar mathematical weight. Growing up feeling like an outsider within the family yields a restrictive risk ratio of 0.90 for adults' subjective financial well-being. Early psychological constraints restrict future economic mobility. They ossify into permanent behavioral traps, causing adults to withdraw from financial markets and limiting their economic agency. Childhood trauma acts as an invisible economic persistent. It structurally inhibits the non-cognitive skills required to navigate adult financial markets. The ultimate moderating variable in this system is the macroeconomic and cultural scaffolding of the host nation, which alters the rules of the network entirely. By zooming out, we apply comparative boundary boxes: collectivist against individualist, and high income against low income. Applying the low income box reveals a surprising delta. The financial penalty of childhood abuse is less severe here than in high-income nations. In an emerging economy like Tanzania, localized cultural scaffolding and community structures reconfigure the expected financial outcomes of early life adversity. We see a similar moderation in collectivist economies. Having excellent health during childhood matters significantly less for achieving adult material security in collectivist cultures compared to individualistic ones. Individual financial outcomes cannot be modeled in a vacuum. The mathematical consequences of trauma and health are strictly modulated by a nation's economic architecture. Standard adult-focused income injection policies often fail to solve deep-seated psychological financial fragility. Adult financial outcomes are the terminal intersection of objective resource limitations, childhood human capital, and macroeconomic scaffolding. Applying this data to future public policy means recognizing that building resilient populations requires early life psychosocial interventions, rather than relying strictly on adult financial literacy programs. True financial security is not a solo economic achievement. It is an intergenerational psychological construct, permanently tethered to the shadow of childhood.